What is a jewelry design center?
JDC is a family-owned business with deep roots in Montana. Why Montana? Because this community made us. Made us family, made us artisans, made us believe in love, made us hometown heroes. Because this community made us shine. Why Montana? Because Montana is home.
What's up, everybody? Happy summer and happy anniversary to us here at Skyline Sports. It's our 10th anniversary. Very proud to be celebrating 10 years. And we are doing top 10 countdowns to commemorate the last 10 years of covering the Big Sky Conference with more depth and breadth than anybody, quite honestly, anybody around. So it's been fun doing it. Sorry for the little bit of the delay. We released all these women's basketball top 10 lists. Then we released our top 10 teams in men's basketball. Last couple weeks, we haven't had an episode simply because our top 10 men's basketball players debate has been unbelievably heated. The Word document with all the statistics and accomplishments and records from the last 10 years of Big Sky Conference men's basketball is 27 pages long. So we've been going through this pretty extensively and pretty in-depth for quite some time. And we still don't even have our top 10 nailed down. We have sort of consensus of who we believe are the 7 guys that have to be on this list. Then we have another probably close to 10 guys that we really heavily considered. And we have our other top candidates. So what we're going to do here is we're going to debate, set the stage for what gets you in the top 10. Then we'll either argue our way or come to some sort of compromise on who deserves to be in the top 10. And then we'll go down the list and rank them. So this is real-time rankings here. SkylineSportsMT.com. Brooks Nuanez, Colter Nuanez, Andrew Houghton behind the glass. We're coming to you through the ESPN MT studio at the Missoula Broadcasting Company. Appreciate the partnership with ESPN MT. So Andrew's going to be the moderator here, so he's going to set us up for all of this.
Yeah, Colter, thank you for the floor. Brutal list, brutal exercise to compile here. I know it's only 10 years, but the list of names that we came up for this list is just incredible. So many great players that we've watched over the last 10 years of the Skyline era. So I'm Andrew Houghton, proud to be part of Skyline Sports and the 10th anniversary. Sitting behind the glass here, you don't see me on the video because Brooks and Colter are the stars, and I'm just going to sort of guide the conversation, and they're going to discuss, and we're going to come to a consensus here on the top 10 men's basketball players of the last 10 years in the Big Sky Conference. And guys, where I want to start here is just really quick. Where did you define your criteria for this list? I mean, what do you think? Is it based on individual accomplishments? Is it based on just how good of a basketball player that they were? Is it based on statistics? Is it based on winning titles as a team, as part of a team? Where do you guys come out on that question?
Hold that thought just for 1 minute. Our top 10 countdown proudly presented in part by Up Top Clothing. Use Skyline 15 at checkout when you're shopping online at teamuptop.com. Legendary brand presenting legendary athletes all summer long. Brooks, a question before we get into defining our criteria for this. Did you feel that making the top 10 list for women's basketball was significantly easier than this?
I think so. I think that's probably fair to say for a variety of reasons. I think that the men's league has had a little bit more variation stylistically over our 10 years.
Certainly.
It's the teams that are winning are different, where the women's basketball, it's been relatively consistent throughout, so it's easier to kind of compare and contrast.
The one thing that I thought, though, was this, and that is having the definitive best players in women's basketball, at least over the last 10 years in the Big Sky Conference, has directly equated to winning.
The best teams.
There's very few players that were these unbelievable individual standouts on teams that hardly won.
Sure.
We have 20 guys we could talk about that were on teams that didn't do anything.
Right.
Like, we will both make the case right now for Tyler Hall. Tyler Hall is the all-time leading scorer in the history of the Big Sky Conference. He's the only 4-time first-team All-League player the league has ever seen. I believe, actually, there's a couple of them now. So I think Jabril Bello maybe got up on that list. Dylan Jones certainly was at least flirting with it. But either way, Tyler Hall's individual resume is unbelievable. His eye test is second to none. But Tyler Hall was on a whole bunch of teams that finished 5th through 7th place in the Big Sky, never won any tournament. I mean, I think they won one Big Sky tournament game, and it was against last-seeded Idaho. And that's just one of many examples. That there's not necessarily that same thing in women's basketball. There's not like a Tyler Hall of the women's league. And I think that says a lot about the difference in the games.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there was some really good standout like shooters and ball handlers on the women's side that we talked about kind of in our all-stars,
right,
which we'll do with men's basketball as well. But I agree with you that there is some players on this list that we do have to define the criteria just because there are going to be some exceptions to that criteria.
So let me ask you this. When it comes to defining the criteria, first of all, over the last 10 years, but also over the last 30 years, what are the 3 best men's basketball programs in the Big Sky Conference?
Montana, Weber State, and
Eastern Washington.
Eastern Washington recently, in the last.
For our time doing Skyline Sports,
definitely.
It's absolutely Eastern Washington. You could probably argue that Eastern Washington is the best.
You could argue that.
Montana had the back-to-back years under Travis DeCuire, but that's it. Only 2 NCAA tournament appearances. Eastern Washington has gone to the NCAA tournament under 2 different coaches, but then also ran through the league twice over the last 2 years with David Riley, but they didn't get to the tournament. But still, you won league titles under Jim Hayford, Shante Leggins, and David Riley. That's 3 different coaches.
For sure.
And then obviously Weber had their high water mark, but then Randy Ray signed a long extension, and they haven't really been back there since. And then probably sneaking in the back door for the 4th best program in the league of the Skyline era is Montana State. And nobody would have said that the first 7 years of Skyline Sports.
Right.
Then Danny Sprinkle shows up, and holy cow, you go to the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row. How can you not be one of the top 3 or 4 programs in the league over the last 10 years?
Absolutely. And before we define this criteria, then this is no slight to Eastern Washington at all. I have tremendous amount of respect for what Eastern's done. And culturally, I mean, they've built a program. They have a real thing going. At times, they felt gettable, where when Weber was at the top, they weren't gettable. You didn't go into that game being like, we're going to crush Weber right now. It's like, no, you're not. They're not gettable at all. Montana had the same thing. So those 2 programs.
And Montana and Weber were like on a collision course always.
They were.
It was like, who's going to get who, right?
And then Eastern kind of would slide in and take the thing and then, use their culture to ride to a championship. And that's, again, not a slight, but they were a little bit of a different like powerhouse.
Do you feel like that the art of carrying the tradition of a program has dissipated over the last handful of years? And if so, how much has that impacted the lack of Big Sky title and NCAA tournament success for both Montana and Weber?
It absolutely has, because at this level, it feels like it's almost in no man's land where it's transfer city.
What did Danny Sprinkle do best? Hey, my roster is going to overturn 50 to 60% every year. I'm not going to complain about it.
It just is what it is.
I'm just going to do it.
You just have to do it. Just commit
Got to do
it.
it. Yep.
So you either commit to that but traditionally, I've always felt, especially being a fan of the NCAA tournament, is these mid-major programs who have success are ones that have tradition and culture.
Sure.
They are. And they're the teams that truly year in, year out, you keep seeing them in the tournament for a reason, and they keep looking similar. You look at teams like Belmont or Princeton, or teams that you recognize, even though it's been 7 years since you may have seen them. I think that's definitely been something that the Big Sky has missed, maybe as a whole. Caught in the middle in the Western United States in the transfer portal era.
SkylineSportsMT.com, top 10 men's basketball players of the last 10 years. So when it comes to defining our criteria, we wanted to, first of all, winning is a huge deal.
It's
right?
a little bit of everything, yeah.
But going to the NCAA tournament is probably one of the biggest things that we used. First of all, where are you in terms of your team? Were you the best player? Were you the most important player?
Absolutely.
Then how much success did your team have? And what sort of impact did you make on your program broadly? Like, for example, I think Jabril Bello has to get a lot of boost because he was the centerpiece that helped the Bobcats sort of turn the corner after having, a complete absence of success for a quarter century, really, even with the individual talent that they did bring in. But then we also wanted to consider a couple of the other programs in the league, too, because Idaho's had some good teams with some great players. Northern Colorado's had some great teams with great players. And Southern Utah has had some great teams with some great players. So that was sort of where we started, was just looking at those squads. I mean, you look down, we have nominees from everybody. Guys like Justin Strings and Marcus Graves, Mike McKinney, they all deserve mentioning from Sac State.
Absolutely.
But Sac State never really went past. I mean, they got to the semifinals of the league tournament once in the Skyline era. That's it. Northern Arizona, I mean, they've had some magical moments, beating Eastern on a buzzer beater a couple years ago. But you're not going to put anybody from those squads in your top 10. There's some good players, Chris Yonku, Jalen Cone, Cam Shelton. But those guys are far outside the mix here. And Idaho State, they've just been bottom half of the league for the whole time, the Skyline Sports era. Portland State, everybody wants to say Portland State's dangerous. They're a team that could beat anybody. It's like, that's fine. That's true. But like, they're also a team that can lose to anybody, and they do it all the time. And they're 10-10 in league every year. Yeah. They win a league tournament game and then they don't, and that's it. And so, they also didn't have anybody that was, Holland Woods was a really good player. Yeah. But nobody that's like defining of the last 10 years.
I think that when we get to the All-Stars, there'll be some guys on
there will definitely be some guys.
Brandon Hollins is someone that is worth talking about.
There's no doubt, man. And like Marcus Graves, that was like the most fun part of going to the first day of the Big Sky tournament is you knew Sac State was going to be playing, and you knew Marcus Graves was like, well, we're the 8th seed, whatever. Cooking. I'm going to go score 40 because like what else do we have to lose? And he would go crazy. And so, we'll get to those guys in the Big Sky All-Stars.
I got to make a quick note that to be in this top 10 and to be in the consideration, which has another 10 players at least, for me, the number one factor is you have to pass the eye test overwhelmingly.
Yes.
You have to be an absolute dude.
Totally.
And that just,
similar criteria to the women, right?
The same thing with the women's is when I watch you, if you're the best player I've seen in a long time and you continue to be every time I see you, and I get to see you 4 or 5 times in a year, like you are in consideration.
Are you excited to go to the stadium? Would you pay money to go see these players play, right?
Absolutely.
Even like throughout the whole Tyler Hall era at Montana State, they were losing more than they were winning. But every time it was a Bobcat basketball game in Bozeman, I'm excited to go watch Tyler Hall.
And
same thing with those.
So was everybody else. They started with 700 fans and finished with 7,000.
That's right.
Different thing.
That's right. And that's the one thing that Brian Fish deserves tons of credit for is because he had exciting players, he brought a lot of attention back to Bobcat basketball. Because you're right. When we first started doing Skyline and we were first started covering games at the Brick Breeden Fieldhouse, there was nobody there.
Empty.
Echoes. Mm-hmm. And then by the end, 33,000. It's not like crazy Montana or Weber attendance, but it was certainly tenfold what it was when they started.
Yep.
All right, Andrew, how do you want to bring this in to sort of help us moderate to start revealing this list?
Well, just one thing that I got to ask that I'm really curious about. How has how the game has changed influenced this list, right?
Really
because I'm looking at it, and there are not very many post-COVID players in consideration for this list. You talked about how the transfer era has changed the league. Is it just true now that this is going to be the way it is going forward, that there are going to be very few players from this era in consideration when we're talking about this again 10, 20 years down the line, right? I'm looking at the top 7. None of them are from the post-COVID era, and we got, I think, 3 guys in real consideration for the list from post-pandemic. Is that just the way things work now?
I think part of it is that you just get more of an affinity for guys when you watch them for 4 years. It's just as simple as that. So you're going to have more clout with us if you have a bigger sample size of playing for a long time.
I think you got to play for 2 years at least.
For sure, and that's where Bello is interesting because he's a transfer, but he played at Montana State for 3 years. So.
Yeah, transfers is fine. There's a lot of, I think, quote-unquote transfers that are in the mix here, for the All-Stars. But if you're going to play for 1 year and you're going to do the one and done, the transfer thing, that whatever we want to call this era, you got to have a Jake Wiley season at Eastern Washington. You got to go like 25-10.
Right.
And you got to light it up. What Dalton connected at Tennessee this year. If that was in the Big Sky, he'd be in consideration, But if you're going to be someone like, say, I don't know, we watched a lot of Auden Moody, who I think is a really tremendous player and is probably going to be on the All-Star list, who, while he was in the Big Sky for a long time, was kind of, toiling around in other programs and lands at Montana and has a solid, couple years, 2 years, right? Played 2. But, he's a 16, 17 point a game guy for a team that won a little bit but wasn't overwhelming. I think that kind of plays into that narrative.
The other thing that's changed, the other 2 factors I think really changed in terms of the statistical impacts of these guys. I guess there's 3 factors that go into this. First of all, college basketball, men's basketball teams play more games than they used to. It used to be a 32-game season. Now, depending on if you go to a postseason tournament, it could be upwards of 35, 36, 38, even 40 games. Like when Northern Colorado went on their big run in the CBI, I think they played 40 games. That subsequently impacts the record books. Like Andre Spite has the single season record for points in a season. He played more games than everybody else, right? That's one part. Then the proliferation of three-point shooting. Like Tyler Harvey led the country in three-pointers made at Eastern Washington his, I believe, junior year. That was, I think he made like 120 and change, like somewhere between 120 and 133s. Tyler Hall made then that many every single year of his career, I believe. He's made over 100. 100 used to be a ridiculous mark. Tyler Hall made 443s in his illustrious career. So the amount of three-pointers shot by some of the best snipers in the league, that also then helped boost scoring. You look at guys just that we've covered in the top 20 in the Big Sky Conference in career scoring. Tyler Hall, number 1. Jordan Davis, number 2. Jarek Harding, number 3. Bogdan Blizniak, number 4. All 4 of those guys, they don't play at the exact same time as each other. They're all the league scoring champs. None of them were because they all played at the exact same time. Jeremy Sanglin is number 6. Harold Frey is number 13. Vic Sanders, number 19. Venke Joyce, number 20. Quentin Hooker, number 21. Saeed Pridgett, number 22. Kareem Jamar, number 23. And Ahmad Rory, number 25. So you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of the top 25 scores in the history of the Big Sky Conference are guys that appeared in the Skyline Sports era. That's because of more games, more three-point shooting, and a higher usage rate. Northern Colorado mastered this system where we're going to get a dude, we're going to put it in his hands, we're going to put him downhill, and he's going to score 750 points a year. That's what we're going to do. You saw it at Weber, too. Jarek Harding, the light's so green, it's like you can't even see it, man. It's so bright, it's unbelievable. So I think that's the other way that the game has changed.
Jarek Harding got shots up.
Got a few shots up.
Yeah.
Harding is the one that's so interesting, too, because he actually couldn't really shoot the three. Yet he's still third in league history in scoring.
He could get to the cup, but like still, no one has shot more 10-footers than Jarek Harding.
Yep. All right, Andrew, what else we got before we get into sort of defining these?
No, I mean, let's get into it,
Okay.
guys. When we pose this question, who are the 10 greatest men's basketball players in the Big Sky Conference in the Skyline era, we started talking about doing this, months ago. Who were the first names that jumped to your mind? Who were the guys who you said absolutely had to be on that list?
I mean, I know people are going to be like, well, what the heck did he
hate,
I mean,
right?
the haters are going to hate, man. Tyler Hall's the best player I've ever seen. He's the best basketball player I've ever seen. You can say he's not very good on defense. I agree. It doesn't matter. There's nobody that I've ever seen that shoots a basketball like Tyler Hall, period. If he was a better athlete, he would be a making millions of dollars in the NBA. He's absolutely one of the, I don't want to be hyperbolous here. He's one of the best shooters of the basketball that lives on the earth today.
Definitely.
There's no question.
No question.
And for him to shoulder it and to go through a program that was filled with tumult, a lot of it self-created by, I love Brian Fish, but like it created by the guy who's running the program.
Absolutely.
And to have all the attention on him and then to have the non-conference games that they scheduled and, just so much of a spotlight on a guy. And you actually are a somewhat limited player in certain ways, yet you're forced to shoulder it all, and you do nothing but average 20 points per game for your career. Not for a season, for your career. And you're getting Montana State in the national headlines because you're leading the country in scoring and three-point shooting, and guys like Jeff Goodman are tweeting about you and writing stories about you.
Watching you live.
Live.
Yeah.
I get it. Tyler Hall only beat the Grizz once. He only won one Big Sky Conference tournament game. They never finished higher than 5th. I get it. I get all the knocks you could possibly make off of him.
Definitely.
If you're like Colter, tickets to a game in the Big Sky Conference cost $25. The number one guy I'm spending $25 on to go see is Tyler Hall. It's not close.
It's not close. Even if Tyler Hall that game scored 16 points, it would be electric. It would be like something you haven't seen.
When did he ever score 16, though?
But you get what I'm saying, that the cover that he's going to get, the double team that someone's going to draw up for him, and the amount of, again, a touch limited athletically, there's no one like Tyler Hall. There's no one like him. And the one
to
thing
score. Here's the other thing, and this is why what you say is so correct in terms of there's no one like him. To score 2,518 points without literally ever getting to the rim on anybody.
I don't think he's probably dunked in a college game.
He's a straight jump shooter. You are shooting 15 to 27-foot shots.
Jumping really high, jump shooter.
All game. And you're getting face guarded. You're getting rubbed off screens.
Yeah, attacked on defense.
Seriously, I've never seen – there is no comp for him. I think that's also the thing that held him back in the NBA because there's no comp for a guy that shoots – I mean, Jamal Crawford is maybe his comp, but Jamal Crawford creates it off the dribble.
Yeah.
Like in terms of – I mean, this is hyperbole, but he's J.J. Redick, but of the Big Sky Conference.
He's taller than that.
He's taller than that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he's a jump shooter like that.
Jump shooter.
Very much, yeah. The thing about Tyler Hall that I think is so important to say and to reiterate is what he became was through development. He did not come to
Correct.
Montana State to be a 25-point-a-game scorer and to be leading the country in scoring and to be the greatest three-point shooter in league history. He did not come there necessarily with that anticipation of trying to have to burden or, bear that load. It's a tremendous burden on someone, especially with his personality type. So for him to be able to develop through all of that the way he did with a coach who probably, I think we could all fairly say, was probably not the best fit for him, obviously wanted to give him the ball, was recruited the heck out of him, got him there. So all of those things, like they were a team in that sense. But Tyler Hall could have left a million times over, maybe even for a better situation, but stayed and developed. And you said he beat the Grizz once, Colter. Do you remember the game? Do you want to remind the folks?
He went 11 of 13 from the field, 7 of 8 from the 3-point line. Michael Ogine is the best defensive player we've covered in the last 10 years, right?
Him and Jonah Radabach.
Yeah, and Bobby Moorhead's probably in the top 10 somewhere.
Somewhere, sure.
Tyler Hall made them both cry. Cooked them. Fully cooked them. I mean, virtuoso.
What did he finish with, 33?
37.
37 points at home to develop into that player.
Unsure he actually even made a free throw in that game. He scored 37 points on jump shots.
To develop into that player with the amount of just pure and utter circumstance that was against him is a tremendous nod, and why he's no question in the top 10. I think he's no question in the top 5. And I think that when the question was posed to us, Colter, of who we thought of first, there's a reason that he was number 1.
Cash One Pawn has the most extensive inventory of any pawn shop in western Montana. Whether you're in the market for firearms, power tools, bows, video game consoles, or sunglasses, Cash One Pawn is the best deals around. And now Cash One Pawn gives you the ability to shop online from anywhere. Make CashOnePawn.com part of your shopping habits. Also make sure to download the Cash One Pawn app. Cash One Pawn, Missoula's premier pawn shop, located on Roller Coaster Road on the way to the Y. SkylineSportsMT.com, 10th anniversary, top 10 men's basketball players of the last 10 years, probably presented by Cash One Pawn. Cash One Pawn has their end of summer sale going on, 20% off of every single item in the store, not just the firearms, not just the power tools, not just the bow and arrows, not just the jewelry, everything. Visit CashOnePawn.com or swing by their location, Roller Coaster Road, just short of the Y, just past the Missoula Airport, right outside the Garden City. Cash One Pawn, the premier pawn shop in western Montana. All right, who else, Brooks, absolutely automatically popped to the top of your mind, top of the list?
I'm going to throw a little wild card in here before we start getting into some more meat of it all, but not even a wild card. But when I thought of this list, I instantly thought of Bogdan Blizniak.
Yeah, Bogdan Blizniak has to be on here.
Instantly was like, this guy, there's no question this is a top 10 player.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about where does he fall on this list? Well, you could call him 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But he is on this list. The way that he dominated the ball, the way that he could rebound, the way that he could push in transition, his just pure size, ability to score all 3 levels. There's no one on this list that even remotely looks like Bogdan, plays like no one.
And he also guided Eastern Washington to 2 straight league title games. They lost both of them to Montana, and right. Montana was the best team. I mean, those 2 Montana teams are 2 of the 4 best teams that we've covered. You can check out our top 10 men's basketball teams of the last 10 years. Bogdan Blizniak absolutely was a no-brainer. Grizz guys that have to be on here, no question. I think the 2 definitively of the last 10 years are Saeed Pridgett and Ahmad Rory, not necessarily in that order. 1A and 1B. Rory is a transfer, but he played at Montana for 3 seasons. Every single coach in the league that you talk to during the Ahmad Rory time would say that is the best point guard in the league, and I wish I had that point guard because of the way he could dictate everything, the pace he played with. He was such a
dog is what you're looking for.
He's a full dog, but he also has this stoicism that's totally unique. It made him like a polarizing character.
He kind of is, yeah.
Because at one point he was so fun to watch, but he is not a wear your heart on your sleeve guy like Michael Ogine or Timmy Falls or so many other guys in the league. Stone cold killer the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time. You're like, does this guy actually even have a soul sometimes?
Does he enjoy this?
Yeah, but then you watched him his senior year in the semifinals of the Big Sky tournament against Weber State. And he took Weber's soul.
Yeah.
And
sure did.
He finally decided, I'm going to have some fun. And he absolutely destroyed him. He's pounding his chest. I mean, that was one of the great individual games, great individual performances we've ever seen.
Yep.
Montana and Weber had been like jockeying for conference supremacy, and the Grizz won that game by like 30 points, ran Weber straight out the gym. Weber was never back to being that level of a program since then, and that was sort of the culmination of the Travis DeCuire, the peak of the Travis DeCuire era.
And if we are going to do the pair of Montana guys, which I think are going to be high on this list, no matter where we kind of land on those numbers, I agree with you, Colter. I mean, Saeed is a unique player. I mean, it is for him to go what he was as a freshman, playing off the ball, playing the three, and being a rebounder, having to defend people, to being, a primary scorer, kind of off ball next to Rory, to then as a senior being the on ball guy. I mean, those kind of transitions, to be able to have that much in your bag is very unique, and he scored at such a high level. He could also defend. He had that mentality of being the best player on the court at all times. No matter when he was playing with Rory and Ogine, he still felt that. I know that Travis DeCuire has spoke very highly personally about Saeed to you, which is, I think that goes a long way as well. But if we're going to talk about the tandem, what started the Skyline top 10, what started the Skyline era was a tandem in Joel Balamboy and Jeremy Sanglin at Weber State.
Those two guys absolutely pivotal. I'll never forget when Sanglin broke his jaw, and that made the Weber go all the way down to 8 seed, and then Sanglin led him on a run as a freshman with like a full face mask wrap thing on in Missoula. It's like, oh, that guy's going to be pretty good. Then the next year, Weber goes all the way to the championship game, and the following year they go to the NCAA tournament. Sanglin, like Hall, was a pure jump shooter. Probably could get to the rack a little bit better, but certainly one of the most prolific scorers we've covered. And Balamboy is the best dirty work guy of the last 10 years, and certainly probably one of the best ever in the league. I mean, he's one of the few guys to have the trifecta of being league MVP, defensive player of the year, and unanimous first-team all-conference. He was the defensive player of the year twice. He's the all-time leader in the history of the league in rebounding. He's also second in league history in block shots. And you said this in an earlier one of these top 10 podcasts. Excuse me, he's 8th in league history in block shots. But he's actually probably the one guy that there's very few guys that are truly NBA that we've covered. In fact, there's pretty much none. But Joel Balamboy is the one.
There's about 5.
But there's Joel Balamboy is the one guy.
The one.
That I was like, man. And he got drafted in the NBA. I was very surprised he did not stick in the NBA.
Personality, fit. I don't know if just the travel schedule and the way. It's just a different kind of guy. I mean, as you mentioned, Colter, it can't be we have to reiterate that he's one of the 5 greatest rebounders in league history. And I don't know who's on that list. I would say that he's the best, but I'm younger than the league, obviously. Unreal rebounder. I mean, give us some stats.
1,312 career rebounds. That is 300 more rebounds than anybody else in the history of the Big Sky Conference.
Come on now.
He's the only dude in the history of the league to average 11-plus rebounds per game 3 years in a row. Led the league in rebounding all 3 seasons. His senior year averaged almost 13 rebounds per game.
Yeah, he's like a 17-13 guy. That's not really how that works. I mean, like, you'll see guys get boards for days who are getting like 7 or 8 of them.
Averaged 11.1 rebounds per game for his career.
For his career,
For his career.
Yeah, it's a different. I mean, he's a game changer. And defensively, the block shots, the body, just the intimidation factor that he could bring to the court. Even if he can't score that well, which, again, he can. I mean, he can flush it with the best of them, but just a different type of player. Like you said, Colter, he is the most league guy that we've seen. I would argue the most league guy in the last 20-plus years. I mean, there's no one like him.
So that's the top. We have 6 guys defined. Tyler Hall, Montana State. Saeed Pridgett, Montana. Bogdan Blizniuk, Eastern Washington. Jeremy Sanglin, Weber State. Joel Balamboy, Weber State. Ahmad Rory, Montana. And the 7th guy that we both consensus believe have to be on this list is Venke Joyce. I think Venke is, in terms of a tone setter, emotional leader, wear your heart on your sleeve, and also piss off the opponent, is the single greatest player that we've covered. He stole the grid. I mean, he snatched the hearts right out of Montana when they won in Missoula to go to the NCAA tournament, the last non-neutral site tournament in league history. There's no one that has a motor like him. There's no one that jumps like him. The dude is one of the most statistically prolific players in the Big Sky Conference ever, and he couldn't shoot the ball from more than 4 feet away, but it didn't matter because he's slapping the glass and dunking on your face.
He's like a
against
40%
everybody.
free throw shooter.
But he's also like a 70% field goal shooter
Like
because
75%.
because he's getting to the rim on everybody.
Everybody. There's no one like Vanke. We keep saying that about these players, but that's what makes this list.
That's what makes these guys
this
unique.
This dude's vertical is like nothing. His second jump is like nothing you've ever seen. His rebounding ability, his ability to cram it. No one dunks like Vanke. There's guys who are high flyers. No one dunks like Vanke. And the way that sets the tone, you cannot replicate someone like Vanke. You can't say, we're looking for a guy like Vanke, go find him, go recruit him. They don't exist. This is a very unique style player. One thing that I think that we didn't mention about the criteria, and all 7 of these guys have this in their bag, but is to be a professional level player. To be in here, I think it adds, if you are a true pro, if you can go play professionally. No one has played as much professional basketball as Vanke, whether that's in Australia,
he's
whether
still playing
that's
pro,
in Japan, or that's in the Philippines. He's been MVP of multiple high-level leagues in multiple countries that matter, where basketball is important. You're making real money. You're talking about six plus figures. Still playing professional basketball. He's a fun Twitter follow. His mom posts all of his games, the stream of them or the replay of them. I've been following Vanke since the second he left, and he has not changed the style of player he is, and it's a tremendous player.
There you go, top 7 men's basketball players, and a lot of agreement there. Our top 7 list here, the guys, the locks that had to be on the list: Vanke Joyce of Eastern Washington, Tyler Hall of Montana State, Saeed Pridgett and Ahmad Rory from Montana, Bogdan Blizniuk of Eastern Washington, and Jeremy Singlin, and Joel Ballenboy from Weber State. Great top 7. We're going to come back right after this. We're going to discuss the last 3 spots on the list, and although there's only 3 spots left, there's probably 10, 15, 20 guys who are going to be in contention. So I think we're going to probably have a few more arguments coming back right after this. Skyline Sports 10th anniversary content, top 10 men's basketball players in the last 10 years of the Big Sky Conference, brought to you by Up Top Clothing and Cash One Pawn.
Our family on our mom's side has a deep Montana history, especially stemming from Butte and Helena. And we are so proud. One of the things we are most proud of is to call ourselves Montanans. At Up Top Clothing, they have Montana-made and Montana-branded clothing for both men and women. Their Montana Till I Die collection is one of my favorite collections anywhere in the clothing world. And you can shop online and get the Montana Till I Die collection and all the other great gear that Up Top Clothing makes delivered right to your doorstep. Visit teamuptop.com, and if you use the promo code SKYLINE15, you're going to get a discount on all your online ordering. Teamuptop.com, Up Top Clothing, reminding you to take a step back and enjoy.
Back at it, reminder, we're doing our top 10 men's basketball players in the Big Sky Conference of the Skyline Sports era. We got our top 7, Vanke Joyce and Bogdan Blizniuk from Eastern Washington, Tyler Hall from Montana State, Saeed Pridgett and Ahmad Rory from Montana, Jeremy Singlin and Joel Ballenboy from Weber State. That leaves us with only 3 spots, but a ton of great players that we haven't mentioned. We're going to get into the arguments. We're just going to let this flow pretty organically, but I want to start it off asking you guys, outside of that top 7, who is the guy that you feel most strongly has to be on the top 10?
Gosh.
I'll start. I think it has to be Jabril Bello. Because statistics, especially when you're somebody like Jabril Bello, are going to ebb and flow, especially points, because you are at the same time the most powerful and intimidating player in the league, period, for the duration of your career, but also because you do have a rather limited offensive skill set, yet your presence makes everybody else around you better. Literally just standing on the court offensively makes Darius Brown and Raekwon Battle and Tyler Patterson and Xavier Bishop and all these other Bobcat guys, Amin Adamu, makes all of them better. Defensively, that was the thing that changed the most about Montana State. They couldn't guard anybody for ever and ever and ever. Then they became, no question, the best defensive team in the conference. And again, they were doing it with guys like Xavier Bishop, who are 5'6", and guys like Tyler Patterson, who are like long stretch wing shooters, but they can't. I mean, Tyler Patterson's become a fine defensive player or whatever. When you got a 6'9" guy that jumps out of the gym in the middle of the defense, there's a reason Jabril Bello was multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. I just think that if you are the guy that leads the scouting report for a team 3 years in a row, and it never changes, even when you're playing with a guy like Raekwon Battle, you're still the number one on the scouting report. Yeah, I think you just have to be on this list.
I 100% agree. I think he could have even been in that top 7, arguably, that we were kind of locked. But I think Bello was an absolute lock for everything you just said, Colter, as well as his ability to push through injuries and his ability to push through slumps. It didn't matter. Number one on the scouting report, getting double teamed, banged up knee, not having a great game, and he's still scoring on your head. And it was every single night, every single game, all through the tournament. It's the biggest mismatch of his era, of his generation. If he was playing with Martin Breuning and Joel Bolomboy, it may have looked a little different, but he had no peer. He really didn't. He was the biggest mismatch in the league by a lot, and it never changed. It was start to finish. I loved watching him. I thought he was a tremendous player. When he had his knees, man, the bounce was insane, like you said. He was a powerful dunker. He could go over both shoulders. I thought he developed it on both sides of the ball, and a tremendous defensive player, as you've mentioned. So I think he's right there.
Andrew, you and I were texting about this, and we were a little bit confused because we thought maybe at first it was a typo in the Big Sky Conference record book, because Jabril Bello is listed as the only 4-time first-team All-League selection in league history.
Was it because COVID year didn't count?
But then we were saying, well, but he's a transfer, because he is. He played at Lamar Community College for actually 2 years before he transferred to Montana State.
He played at Montana State for 3 years.
Played at Montana State for 4 years. I'm looking at his bio right now. He got what, I've never seen this before, but he was his second junior year is what the biography says. His second junior year, he was the Big Sky MVP, and then he played the year following that as well. He has 4 statistical seasons on his career stats. 2019-20, 2021, 21-22, and 22-23.
Wow.
So, that aids in a lot of the statistical production. He never averaged more than 14 points per game, but he averaged 13.1 points per game for his career. He's a 1,600-point scorer. Jeez. He's also got 870 rebounds, and he's also got 165 block shots. Those are all absolutely in the top 20, maybe even the top 10
absolutely
in league history. So I think that also, fortifies his argument a little bit. Andrew, I know we were kind of confused by that, but I think that actually is not a typo.
No, I think that's right. And like you guys mentioned in the first half, the other thing about Jabril Bello, Danny Sprinkle changed the culture at Montana State. Jabril Bello changed the culture at
Correct.
Montana State. When you look at where they were when he started his career and where they were when he ended his career, there's an argument that he's the guy who made the biggest jump there in the culture and the success of a team over the course of his career of anybody in this last 10 years, right?
Well, and there's definitely, you have to sometimes give credence to certain elements in which teams find advantages. At Eastern Washington, their definitive advantage was the Australian pipeline they were able to craft.
Yep.
And that gifted them guys like Vanke Joyce, guys like Felix Von Off. They had a lot of great Australian players at Eastern Washington. You have to. I don't think you can underrate the impact that Chris Haslam had at Montana State. He was an assistant under Brian Fish. He helped get Harold Frey to Montana State, but then he also helped get Jabril Bello and Caleb Fuller and Amin Adamu and this whole pipeline of these United Kingdom guys that were playing on the UK national team, and they're just coming to Bozeman to play for Has as much as they were to come to play for Fish or Danny Sprinkle.
For sure.
And that's the tie that binds, right? Like Jabril Bello, not one chance on the earth ends up at Montana State if it's not for Chris Haslam. He's playing at Texas Tech or something like that.
Oh, yeah. There's no way.
He's like, when Montana State played Texas Tech in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and Texas Tech was the biggest team I have ever seen in D1 basketball, there was only one guy that looked like he belonged on the court. It was Jabril Bello.
Yeah, for sure. And the UK thing is huge. Chris Haslam's a tremendous developmental coach as well. I have a ton of respect for him. I think that he will continue to
Great Osabar, another Brit that he deserves credit for.
Don't forget about Great Osabar.
One of the best players in all of college basketball.
The number 7 overall pick in the NBA draft next year has some recruiting chops.
The two knocks, I think, against Jabril Bello, as I'm looking at him, are he kind of just was what he was for his entire 4 years. He averaged between 12.8 points and 14 points over 4 years. So he never really took that step forward, at least statistically.
For sure.
And also, when I'm looking at him, his rebounding numbers don't jump off the page the way that you would expect for a guy that huge with that level of bounce. Do either of those sort of give you a pause putting him on this
Yes.
list?
The rebounding numbers are actually kind of asinine. Like, he's a comparable rebounder to Michael Ogine.
Well,
And he's
we'll
seven
get to
inches.
Michael
He's
Ogine.
7 inches taller.
we'll
I mean,
get to Michael Ogine.
part of it though was because Jabril Bello did have knee issues, and they did have him on a minute limit. Like, he never played more than 25 minutes a game.
His knees are destroyed.
Like, conventional wisdom says that if you are his size, you just get 8 rebounds a game. But that's assuming that you're playing 32 to 35 minutes a game. He never played more than 26 and played more like 24 because that's just the minute limit that they had to have him on.
He doesn't have knees, man. He's
Right.
bone on bone. Like, this guy ain't walking for very long in his life.
Yeah.
The effort, the attitude were both poor.
I mean, I'll say this, and if by chance he gets mad at me for saying this, I'm sorry, but it's just true. Jabril Bello was the player on Montana State that Danny Sprinkle was the most frustrated with throughout his career.
I think Jabril Bello is the most frustrating person in every person that he is in their life.
Because when you see him go to the top, you're like, man, why can't I get that all the time?
Yeah, we call it dump diaper. It's someone who just has a bad attitude and just doesn't. If they're not engaged at a current time, they truly are selfish enough to just not care.
But the thing that's crazy is then he would always turn it on in the big games.
He always could find it.
Yes.
And even when he was bad, he was still a mismatch. Not bad. Even when he had a bad attitude and poor effort, he was still a mismatch. But again, we're
with
talking
guys-
about
with
what we want from his effort. We're not talking about being his knee doctor.
No, that's correct.
Like someone who's got bone on bone who weighs 260. Like, it's a different.
Well, it's also if you have guys like Xavier Bishop, Raekwon Battle, and Darius Brown, like especially Raekwon and Xavier Bishop, and Amin Adamu too. It's like you walk around the playground.
You need that guy.
You need the guy that when you're going to be the guy that when you're Xavier Bishop and you're up there starting the fight, you need the guy that's going to get your back. That's what Jabril Bello represents.
It does give us, I think both of us, all three of us, Andrew, it does give us pause. But when you talk about, read off the accolades one more time, Colter, the MVP and the defensive MVP.
I mean, he's 4-time Big Sky All League. He's 3-time unanimous first team All League Big Sky Conference. He was the league MVP as a junior. He also won Defensive Player of the Year twice in the league, and he helped Montana State advance to back-to-back NCAA tournaments.
And I've said this a lot. This list is not meant to be, if you had the most all-conference nods and you scored the most, this is not the top 10 scores. This is not the top 10 most awarded. But those things that you just read off, that's the facts, and that's what it actually happened, and that's what it looked like.
All right, the other guy that I think that everybody's probably screaming and yelling at when they're listening to this that says they have to be on here,
Where is he?
Dylan Jones. Dylan Jones, on one hand, I mean, he's a first-round draft pick. What else do you have to say beyond that? I mean, he's the only first-round draft pick that we've covered. He is the first-round draft pick in the Big Sky since Damian Lillard. I think that those are the only two guys in the 21st century to get drafted in the first round. I guess Rodney Stuckey was a first-round draft pick. So there's three guys in the last 25 years, let alone the Skyline era, that are first-round draft picks. That in itself carries an unbelievable amount of weight.
It absolutely does.
Andrew Houghton dug up an awesome statistic for his very fine profile on Jones and his draft quests. You can check that out, SkylineSportsMT.com. But Jones was, I believe, like half a rebound away from being the first Division I player to average 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game since 1991. So your whole lifetime.
Right.
That also has to carry a little bit of weight. He is, I believe he was the league's rebounding champ twice. He was the league's scoring champ twice. He was freshman of the year. His first year, he was MVP. His fourth year, and he was first team all-conference every year in between.
I mean,
the drawbacks are, though, is that he lost in the league tournament before he ever got to the championship game. That said, his junior and senior years, or excuse me, his sophomore and junior years, lost in all-time classics to Montana State. Lost by 2 points both times. There was the never-ending, almost killed me double overtime game in Boise a couple of years ago that didn't end until like 1 o'clock in the morning.
ugh.
And then the year before, I mean, he left it all on the court. He
did.
He was lying on the floor in tears because he left it all on the court. So, there's a whole bunch of different measurements of are you a winner or not. That's just the one thing that holds him back, right? The only guy that we
And
got
his senior year. Talk about his senior year in the tournament.
Senior year in the tournament, they just sort of no-showed.
Just kind of just no show.
Andrew, you know and vouch for Dylan Jones more than anybody. So, Give us the pluses and minuses for having him in the top 10.
I think the biggest pluses and minuses that stand out about Dylan Jones are two sides of the same coin, right? It's this guy, aside from the accolades, aside from the statistics sort of paint a picture of it. This guy is one of the most unique players in the last 10 years in the Big Sky Conference. I mean, everybody else that we've talked about, you can put in sort of an archetypal role, whether it's the absolute in-control lead point guard like Ahmad Rory, or whether it's just the big guys like Jabril Bello and Joel Bollenboy. You know, they're great, but we've seen guys like that. You haven't seen a guy like Dylan Jones, right? A point forward, a guy who could lead the conference in rebounding, assists, scoring, do it all, lead the conference in steals as well. Like, he's just completely one of one, completely new archetype, right? So that, for me, sort of makes him stand out among all these other guys. I mean, we got a lot of quick trigger, great shooters,
Sure.
microwave scoring guards, your Jeremy Senglins, your Tyler Harveys.
How do you justify this, though? The Big Sky Conference has been around now for 61 years. Weber State, I believe, has 24 banners hanging in their arena. Not one of them is tied to Dylan Jones. How do you justify that?
I think that's the other side of the same coin, man. I think that Weber State for 4 years really, really struggled to get this guy in the right role because he can do everything on the basketball court. So for a long part of his tenure there, that was their game plan. It was to have Dylan Jones do everything on the basketball court, and I'm not sure that was the best role for him, and I'm not sure that was the best role for them. And I think part of that, you're right, sort of falls on him as well as the coaching staff and whatever else was going on there. I think that there were times when he just sort of tried to take over games when he didn't need to, times when he got a little bit out of the flow of the game, which is crazy for a guy who has such great feel for the game at times. I think you really saw it in this year when they lost to Montana State in the tournament, though.
Sure.
It was the opposite. I mean, he didn't take over that game in the second half as Montana State was shooting the lights out. So
they went on like a 40-something run. It was crazy.
I mean, there's nothing you can do when Montana State shoots 75% in the second half.
Correct.
But I thought Dylan Jones just went out a little bit, like you said, a no-show in the second half of that game.
Sometimes statistics, though, too. I mean, I'll remind you, because you're a Washington, D.C. guy, once upon a time, Gilbert Arenas averaged 29 points per game for the Washington Wizards. What did that actually get you, right? Like, Carmelo Anthony won a scoring title in New York, and the Knicks missed the playoffs. Like, sometimes statistics, you can pile up a bunch of statistics on a bad team. So I'll ask you this, Brooks. On one side, you could say Dylan Jones fell short in making his teammates better, and that's why they fell short in terms of wins and losses.
I do not agree with that.
On the other side, you could say Dylan Jones' teammates just weren't that good. He didn't have the standard player that Weber State was used to having, that it was, Damian Lillard was playing with a whole bunch of better players than what Dylan Jones was playing with.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave the last part out because I can't speak to Damian Lillard's teammates, but I think that the feel that Dylan Jones has for the game, I mean, Andrew kind of mentioned it, but it is a true high-level point guard feel with a true point forward ability to rebound. I mean, he's a tremendous rebounder. When he was a freshman, I thought this guy's going to be one of the best fours in the league. Oh, he plays the one? I thought he played the four. Why is this guy, a guy as a freshman who's playing on a really good team and still stood out?
Sure.
Was still a 10-point-a-game guy as an 18-year-old. I think that Dylan Jones' court vision, his ability to pass to both corners, his ability to get downhill on people, what he's got in the bag, the spin move, the fadeaway, the off the glass, the finish at the rim. He's a really, really good player, man. I mean, when you talk about eye test, if you know hoops and you see Dylan Jones play any point of his career, any time during Weber State, you'd say this guy's one of the best players on the court.
Last thing on Dylan Jones, and we'll move on. Andrew, you mentioned that maybe it was a weakness or a failure by the Weber State coaching staff to put him in the right position to succeed. On the flip side of that coin, a lot of two-sided coins here with Dylan Jones. But on the flip side of that coin, you could also argue that they tried to do too much with him to intentionally inflate his statistics to further enable him to get him to stay. Like, if you watch the way that they ran their team rebounding, they're doing it exactly how the Oklahoma City Thunder used to do it with Russell Westbrook.
I always thought that.
They're clear. I mean, literally 3 guys are not even trying to get the rebound. They're just running down the court so that Dylan Jones can get the rebound, play on the ball, and he can get the rebound and the assist or the rebound and the point on the next possession.
I always struggled with that because while you were looking at Dylan Jones averaging 10 rebounds a game, Weber State had a 7-footer, Alex, too, who was moderately skilled. He had the worst rebounding numbers of any big man in the league because what did he do? He boxed out on the defensive glass so Dylan Jones could grab it and go. But on the other hand, like, is that a failing of Dylan Jones? Like,
Sure.
Weber State's best option was to have the ball in his hands, so just let him get the rebound and bring it up. Like, of course it inflated his statistics. I always struggled with that. His rebounding numbers certainly inflated. I mean, everything. The statistics were always inflated because he had the ball in his hands so much. He was a really, really polarizing player at times to watch. I mean, when he was cooking, when he was taking over games and doing everything that Brooks talked about, I mean, grabbing the ball off the glass, getting downhill, putting his shoulder in guys' chests and just laying it up. I mean, you felt that there was nobody who could stop him, whipping the lasers to the corners for the shooters. You just felt like there was nobody who could stop him, but there were times where he could just get out of that mode. And, the other thing, he's a good defender. I think he has the potential actually to be a good defender in the NBA. He had great instinct for the ball. His steal numbers were incredible, and that is completely true to what he was. He had great instincts for the ball, great instincts for the game, and that puts him in the right position on defense a lot of times. But he could take plays off on defense. They could try to hide him on defense because his workload was such on the other parts of the game. There were times when he just wasn't the absolute complete all-court player that he had the promise and the potential to be. I mean, Montana in Missoula this year, Montana absolutely attacked him on defense on every single play.
Absolutely.
They took advantage of him.
Dylan Jones is so fun to talk about because he does elicit so much polarization.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.